Hi everybody, welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee.
I'm Camilla.
And I'm Wendy Yee.
Today we're taking a look at this Sky Team. Prepare for landing. This was probably one of the most hot looked at games at Gen Con this last year.
Yeah.
It was often demoed and everything. It's a 20-minute, two-player, cooperative, limited communication game.
And it's actually 20 minutes.
Right.
Which
Yes.
surprised me.
Actually 20 minutes without being like a real-time game. You know, it's not 20 minutes because there's a 20-minute timer.
Right.
It actually takes 20 minutes.
Yeah. So you're landing a plane, and just as all pilots and co-pilots
As I do.
you're giving each other the silent treatment.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go
My
ahead.
favorite kind.
Yes. Let's go ahead and show you how this one plays, and then we'll give you our thoughts. Here is Sky Team on the table. Over here on the right side is everything you need to play your first game. These things on the left are extra modules that I'll go over briefly, but you don't have to worry about them yet. This represents the cockpit meters and readouts and everything to successfully land your plane. Each player, the pilot and the co-pilot, have a player screen with 4 dice behind them hidden from the other player, cooperatively working as pilot and co-pilot to get everything necessary in order to land the plane. The game takes place over the course of 7 rounds. Each round, at the end, you will pass the time by showing the altimeter, the altitude is moving down until you have touchdown. When touchdown happens, you have to have been at the airport, and that's represented by flying forward, moving this dial down. If at any point you move this forward and there is an airplane that has not been cleared out of the path, you will lose immediately. So you have to spend actions to clear your way here so that you have no airplanes and are at the airport down here when touchdown happens. And you also have to do a few other things. You have to make sure that all of your landing gear has been activated as the pilot. And as the co-pilot, you have to activate the flaps, which are going to allow you to land safely. You also have to prep your brakes, and then you can also have a little cup of coffee here to help you concentrate. So over the course of the game, players will start taking turns by whoever's shown here, pilot or co-pilot, depending on the round. They will roll the dice behind their player screen, and then one at a time place dice out onto a board space matching their color, and if there is a number requirement, matching the number. So I, as the pilot, could, for example, go ahead and place this out here because this is a 3 or a 4. Or I could place it over here on the engine speed. After I do that, then the co-pilot, whose dice I cannot see, is going to place one of their dice out as well. So maybe they're going to put out this 4 over here. Play goes back to the pilot, who says, woof, well, I mean, I can do this. So these 4 spaces here are some of the most important ones. They're mandatory and must be done every round. When both players have put dice here, you're going to compare the numbers here. So in this case, the difference is going to control the tilt of the airplane with one of the best plastic pieces I've ever seen used in a game. The difference is going to show how many notches of movement it is going to lean that direction. And if ever you tilt the plane too far, you instantly lose the game. This has to be perfectly level by the time you touch down at the airport. Now the other player is going to go, and they place their die out here, and then you add up these 2 numbers. This represents your engine speed. If the combined total is between the blue and the orange marker, the airplane will move forward 1 space by moving this down. If the total were higher than the orange marker, then players would advance 2 spaces because it is past here, represented by moving a second one. If the combined total is lower than the blue marker, then players will not move forward. They're fine, they're just traveling so slow that this isn't covering much distance. Now the other spaces here, as dice get put out into prep the landing gear, for example, it'll move this forward, representing more drag on the airplane, or as the co-pilot preps the flaps, that will advance the orange marker here so that it's harder to move double speed. Down here, the pilot has to prepare the brakes. You notice that there are blue spots. Every time the brakes are prepared, it makes it so that the landing speed on the very final round can be a little bit higher if players are moving too fast with their combined total in the round that they reach the airport, then they do not safely land. The last type of action is to clear airplanes out of the route. As you get to this type of a situation here, you'll notice that this is getting a little bit hairy. So a player can put a radio ahead action here. They will count that number of spaces forward that's shown on the die and remove the airplanes, clearing the path. Now the last thing down here you'll notice is that either player can put a die down here to get a cup of coffee, representing a little concentration break. This means that at any time a player can adjust the value of a die by plus or minus 1 by spending it. So a player could turn this 2 into a 1, clearing out this path here. After all the dice have been spent, that's the end of a round. The altitude drops by 1 step, i.e. the round tracker moves forward. There are some reroll tokens that can be earned. Players recall their dice, play switches to the other player starting, and then you continue. You have to get all the parameters set as you land. So that's the only way to win. Now I'm going to briefly describe what some of the other modules are. You'll see that as this is the Montreal Trudeau Airport. This is actually the simplest one in the game. There are advanced airports that have this die mechanism where you don't have as many planes seated on here, but every time you end on one of these spaces, you have to roll the traffic die to see how many spaces up more airplanes show up. On more difficult sides, there might even be a requirement to have tilt. Your tilt has to be within a certain parameter in order to move past that space. Some airport paths are shorter and some are much longer. They are color-coded as to their difficulty, and they also show extra modules that you might use. The flight log here, after you've played the first scenario, will explain these extra modules, how the in-turn works, or some rounds are required real-time, or you have a kerosene leak. And these are all of the scenarios that you can play. It's not a campaign, you can play them in any order, and they also show which modules you have to use. So perhaps the kerosene module, where you have to place dice out here to prevent you from losing too much fuel at the end of every single round, another loss condition. Or maybe you're in a particularly icy airport trying to land, and so you have to have a more complicated brake system because of ice on the fields. Maybe you have to train an intern with these tokens randomly put out here, forcing you to spend dice down here, but you get to use these numbers as any action, but it's a little bit less predictable what order you get to do the actions. Or maybe you have to factor in wind speed over here with this side. That's going to affect how your movement goes. Maybe you'll be able to get some player powers. In fact, these aren't necessarily player powers, but either player can use these on the harder airport approaches so that you have more skills to work with. So there you go. That's everything you need to know about the cooperative game SkyTeam. All right, so one of the first things, this is from Scorpion Mask, who has made a lot of really phenomenally well-produced games. I think of things like Decrypto and Turing Machine and some of the other games that they've done, and I think they look great.
And impressively done, like Turing Machine specifically, you know, like how that works together is just blows my mind. You know what I mean? So like, yes, they're well-produced, but also well-designed productions.
Yeah. This, for me, putting it together, I love the dual layer boards that are not glued. These come with little sticky tabs. You add the sticky tabs and you have a lot less warping. You have a lot less issues with things if they don't stay flat.
So I was going to ask, because I couldn't tell if it was because it's triple layer now.
Yes.
And is it triple layer, is it double layer with the triple folded over, or is it truly just all single layer that you layer 3 times?
There's some that fold back, some that fold forward.
Okay,
like
so
they cut them, yeah.
So it is 3.
It's like a single piece
layers.
that is, yeah.
I did like that.
It was just, it was really nice. It was really well laid out. I knew exactly what to do, where to put the stickers, everything. Like,
and
they
I only
just did a
knew
good
it
job.
was stickered because I looked at the instructions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was like,
oh cool.
Wow, like it doesn't scream. This is put together with sticky notes.
Right.
And they're not sticky
Wendy
notes, sticky
did this.
tabs, sticky
tabs. I would call them,
stickers. It's not. It doesn't feel like it's put together with stickers. I found the word.
Yeah. I love that because then, as Wendy said, you don't have the warping as much issue.
Yes.
We have a lot of humidity here, or we don't have any humidity in Vegas. Those boards like almost always bend, no matter where you are. But this one don't. They allow for the slots for the dice to sit in, which just feels nice. And most importantly, I think, as you're moving the altitude and the progress towards the airport, they slide so easily.
Right.
Because of that little underneath thing.
Right. It has a guide almost. And I really like the flaps, which is what the co-pilot does, and then the pilot does the landing gear, I think, is that right? And when they're doing those little dials that you just slide over, I think because of the way they're layered together, that dial is really smooth, but it's also flush. You know, because it fits in. And then when you're done, you just flip it over and they fall out and you store them in a baggie or whatever. So I think it needed to be double layer, and they found a really good way to make that happen.
Absolutely agree. Now, the gameplay itself, I think one of the most common questions that people probably have going into it is, you're a pilot and a co-pilot, and you're not allowed to talk with each other. So, first of all, why? And then second of all, does the limited communication portion of this game work? And I don't know, do you
I have thoughts. I have lots of thoughts, strong thoughts.
Surprising.
I know, shocking turn of events. I feel strongly that it does not matter. I think it works very, very well here. Thematically, I don't know why. In my mind, I just kind of accepted like, oh, okay, well, this is my job I'm supposed to do, and maybe the cockpit's too loud and I don't have the headphones on, or, whatever. I don't know. I come up with something. But I think for the gameplay as a mechanism, it is fantastic. It gave me similar feelings to like The Crew. When you're doing certain things, that
was exactly
connection?
what I connected it to.
Yeah, where you have to communicate stuff without communicating it, and know when to play what. You know what you can do and what you need to let them know. I have no option other than putting a high number right here that you need to match. So I'm going to do that first so you know about it. And then if you don't play immediately, I'm assuming that you have that taken care of. Things like that. So I just really like that you're reading into it and trying to make this work, reading the motivation in a very smooth way. Because sometimes there isn't anything to communicate, because that is like, I'm going to give you a reroll token, or put a reroll token, the cup of coffee, the cup of joe up there. And that itself means something. I think it works really well.
I think that it's very clever, because a lot of these limited communication games, they're like, you can communicate this one way, this one time. You don't even get that, but every action that you're doing is communicating something. And I know when we were first playing it, I was like, oh, I did that. I definitely should have done that in a different order. Like, I responded to something Chris had put out, and I was like, oh, let me just finish that. And I was like, oh, wait, now he doesn't know what to do for the next thing. So it's just, there's some really cool, clever communication in there. I like it a lot. And I agree with you that it just feels like, hey, I'm just doing my job. Like, we're landing a plane. I can't ask you, should I flip the switch yet? Should it?
Now?
Please? I'm going to do it. Oh, I did it too soon. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like sometimes the no communication, you have to know what that means as well. Like if you're trying to do the one with the playing the balancing, and you need to get that down. And I'm not playing it because I have a really high number and a really low number, and I'm waiting to see what you put in there, because I can go one of two ways, and you don't. So we're both like, no, you go, but you can't say any of that. And so the no communication can mean something, but what does it mean? Who's going to make that first play? And there was one play of it where it was actually a really funny moment. It leads to a really good tension in the game, and that when it breaks, it's just really rewarding. There was one game I played where we're working on that axis, and I didn't want to play because I had just the same situation. I had a 5 and a 2. I can go one of two ways, and we had one cup of joe, so we can make it go up or down. And waited, and finally it's the last round. The person I was playing with didn't play either, and I was like, all right, I'm just going for it. And I put my 5 out there, and he just started laughing. He's like, oh my gosh, that's so relieving, and then put his 5 out there as well. It was like we had very similar dice rolls. And so it builds a good tension that when it breaks is very rewarding, and it just leads to those kind of stories.
And because it's so short, if we did mess everything up, it's not a big deal to be like, okay, let's try again.
Right,
we've got it now.
Whoops.
Yeah. That's the way real life works.
Luckily, they didn't take our license. We'll just try again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's cool. That's how it works.
Bring on another 747. Thank you. No, and I agree. The limited communication in this is what makes the game, is what makes all these moments that we're talking about. Because if I could just say, I only have high dice, even if it doesn't, some of the limited communication games have that thing where you can say, my rolls are high, but I'm not allowed to say how high they are. I don't care for that at all. And this one is just based on my placement, you react.
You're inferring.
Based on this placement. Exactly.
Right. And it also has that first stage where it says you can strategize here and talk about it. And I'll be like, hey, if I get a high number, I'll put it here. You can have those discussions, but once the dice start rolling, you have to have more intuition with it, and with the person you're playing with, because it is a 2-player only game, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I was like, that's all I've played it out of. Yeah, so.
The part that I really enjoy about it is that it's asymmetrical, but you're doing a lot of the same things. but it's all about timing and order. So you've got the pilot, and the pilot is working on, filling out whatever their landing gear stuff, getting the brakes ready, and they can help a little bit with the air traffic control, but not a lot. Whereas the co-pilot's doing a lot more air traffic control. They're prepping their wings or slats or whatever they're doing. And so there's just kind of an order to things. And so you're like, I'm waiting on you to move that little blue disc over so that we can land and all that stuff correctly. And then the co-pilot's like, okay, cool, now we're here, now we can do this. Like it's really fun to see how that changes even from game to game, because you've got totally different ramps that you're headed towards, different airports, different settings, all of that. And so seeing how that timing has to be adjusted with those asymmetrical powers, I appreciate that.
Yeah, light asymmetry, but enough that it matters. I'm playing the role of the co-pilot, and I'm like, we sure have a lot of planes in front of us. That's me. I got to do that. Got it. Like, I love that. And I believe it's 22 airports in this box. All you do is you flip over that different little landing strip thing, you put in a new one, it increases the difficulty in a really nice little stepwise fashion. Sometimes to move past certain parts, you have to have a certain roll, on your axis. Sometimes you have to put out new airplanes. You roll traffic dice. Some of them get really difficult, and there's even there's extra modules you slap on to the cockpit, to the framework itself, and it looks great when you do it because these little yellow lines, line up and stuff. Oh, got to deal with wind. We got to deal with losing fuel now. And I think that that's really fun because it's not a campaign, but it kind of feels like if you're enjoying it, you can play through the increasing difficulty as if it were a campaign almost.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I wanted to shout out and praise it for is just that kind of campaign feel. It's not a campaign, but how you can build your own difficulty as you go.
Like scenarios.
Out of the box, right. Out of the box, you play it as it is, and I think we played it together the first time that I played, and we won. Right? And then when I taught it to Z, we won. That feels good in a cooperative game. Like, wow, out of the gate, we had no questions after the very first round, and we were able to win. That feels good and builds that confidence to then go into that second game and be like, oh, we're not as good as we thought we were. Hold on. Fun fact, can't actually fly a plane. It feels good to have that, now I get it, that very vanilla kind of scenario, which is the base game. And you can play that forever. I think it's still enjoyable. But there's all these different variants or modules that you can add on to. And the color coding system is so clean and so fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
You come out, you play on the green side of it was elevation, right? The elevation, and the green side of you're approaching to the airport. You want to step it up, you maybe turn over to a yellow one, or you grow up to the higher elevation track, things like that. Like, you can really customize it. Kind of reminded me of the Reckoners, where they have, the A, both the boards have an A and B side. So you can play AA, AB, BA, BB, and you have this step up that you can go through to make it more difficult. I love that. It's so clean, it's so intuitive, and it's so exciting to be able to see what else you can do with the game.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that coming down here on final thoughts and scores here, who wants to start this one off?
I can start.
All right.
I'm going to start with an 8.5. I think that it is absolutely solid. Like, this is a great game. It is well produced. It is such a good, clean amount of time that, you could pull this out anytime, any day. I love the two-player asymmetry that I was talking about earlier, and just the general flow of the game. I love everything that's going on. There's mitigation for the dice. It's great. So 8.5 for me.
I'm also giving this one an 8.5. I think that this is Jordan on Board Game Breakfast does a segment called Weeknight Games. This is going to be an immensely perfect weeknight game.
Yep.
I want to play something that makes me think, makes me have to try and be in sync with the person I'm playing with, and have a rewarding experience. And it sets up super fast and tears down super fast, and the gameplay is actually 20 minutes. That's phenomenal, and that's not a common thing to find. I enjoy this so much that I actually played some of the extra modules and stuff on my own. There's a few different ways that you can kind of fudge solo rules you can find on Board Game Geek. You play with one set of dice and you roll the other dice one at a time when you go to place them.
Oh, interesting.
And it's just, there's little ways that people are looking at this, and I think it's so modular that people are probably coming up with their own, like, here's this airport, I'm going to make my own little approach strip, and you can do that. It's like a toy box. You can play with what parts you want to play the real-time scenario, or you don't. then don't. Play
Right.
every other part. That's great. So 8.5 for me.
I wish I could go to my desk right now and show you the piece of paper where I've written down my score, because I'm also at 8.5, and I promised I was. It's on my desk right now, okay? I did that. I'm coming in at 8.5 as well. I would very much recommend this game. I think it's excellent. I think I'm really a stickler for, especially limited communication games, how intuitive does it feel? Because I don't want to give away anything by asking questions. You know, the board, the iconography on it is fantastic. It's clear who does what and who can do what. When that triggers something else happening, for example, if I do this, it makes this dial move up one, tick up one, that's on there, but it's also not in the way. And it still managed to be a very pleasing, aesthetically looking game. And so I really enjoy it. I look forward to, exploring all the different modules. I've played with a couple of them, but there's still more, and I get excited about going into it. I get excited about playing it with people I already communicate well with. I look forward to playing it with people I don't and just try and see how it goes. I think it's a 20-minute package. I love that you said the weeknight game. I kind of call it my nightcap game. You know, this would be my one that it's like, oh, I'm not quite ready for bed. I want to do something. Hey, hold on, let me pull this out real quick. You know, I can definitely see myself using that quite a bit. So very much enjoy the 8.5.
Well, there you go. 8.5s across the board. So Sky Team gets a seal of excellence from us here at the Dice Tower. Really enjoyable game. One that we recommend that you go check out. So until next time, my name is Chris Yee.
I'm Camilla.
And I'm Wendy Yee.
Have fun landing the jumbo jet
Yes.
on your first try.
Without talking about it.